Take me back to your place and give me thing between legs. The shrill, slurred demand pierced the elegant atmosphere of the interspecies gala, causing hundreds of heads to turn in unison. Bobby Reyes, human diplomat extraordinaire, felt his stomach drop as he locked eyes with the source of the outburst. Quasar, the intoxicated female Kazan diplomat, stumbling towards him. The grand ballroom of the Kazan capital city's most prestigious venue fell silent. 50 years of tense human-Kazan relations hung in the balance as Bobby's mind raced, searching for a response that wouldn't trigger an interstellar incident. He'd known this celebration, marking half a century of fragile peace, would be a minefield, but he hadn't expected it to explode quite so spectacularly. Quasar's azure skin glistened under the harsh lights as she swayed, clearly affected by the human alcohol she'd consumed. Bobby cursed inwardly. They should have known the Kazan physiology would react differently to Earth spirits. As she approached, he could see the mixture of desire and confusion in her multifaceted eyes. The room erupted into chaos. Offended Kazan officials, their elaborate head crests flaring with indignation, began shouting for Bobby's immediate expulsion from the planet. Human security forces pushed through the crowd, their hands hovering near concealed weapons as they moved to protect their diplomat. Kazan guards, tall and imposing in their ceremonial armor, surrounded Quasar, attempting to escort her away from the scene. Bobby felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to see the grim face of the human ambassador. "Smooth this over, Reyes. By any means necessary. We can't afford a diplomatic crisis." The weight of the order settled on Bobby's shoulders as he nodded, understanding the implications. He'd have to play along with Quasar's drunken request, despite the strict laws forbidding intimate relations between humans and Kazans. As he stepped forward to address the crowd, a Kazan official hissed in his ear, "That's Supreme Leader Zaxalor's daughter, human, tread carefully." The revelation sent Bobby's mind spinning. He was now caught between interstellar law, his ethical obligations, and the potential for this incident to unravel decades of hard-won peace. As he gently took Quasar's arm, guiding her towards the exit, he caught sight of a group of Kazan hardliners huddled in a corner, their eyes gleaming with opportunistic malice. Bobby recognized them as members of the anti-human faction that had long opposed cooperation between the species. He realized with a chill that they would see this scandal as the perfect chance to sabotage the alliance and potentially ignite a war. Their furtive glances and hushed conversations spoke volumes about their intentions. As Bobby and Quasar stepped into the warm Kazonian night, a sleek shuttle descended from the sky. Human and Kazan security forces formed a tense perimeter around them, fingers twitching on weapon triggers. Bobby helped the still mumbling Quasar into the vehicle, acutely aware of the eyes watching their every move. The shuttle door sealed with a hiss, leaving Bobby alone with the inebriated alien diplomat. As they lifted off into the star-filled sky, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night would change the course of human-Kazan relations forever. Whether for better or worse remained to be seen, but one thing was certain. Bobby Reyes was now at the center of a storm that threatened to engulf two worlds. The shuttle's sleek frame cut through the night sky, its interior a stark contrast to the chaos left behind at the gala. Bobby sat rigid, hyper-aware of Quasar's proximity as she slumped against the plush seat beside him. Her azure skin seemed to pulse with an otherworldly glow under the dim cabin lights, her multifaceted eyes unfocused as she mumbled incoherently. As they approached Bobby's residence, a sprawling complex designed to accommodate human diplomats, an uneasy feeling settled in his gut. The city below was eerily quiet, the usual bustle of Kazonian nightlife conspicuously absent. He peered out the window, noticing small groups of Kazans huddled on street corners, their head crests flaring with agitation. The shuttle touched down on the landing pad with a soft hiss. Bobby helped Quasar to her feet, supporting her weight as they stumbled towards the entrance. As the door slid open, he caught a glimpse of movement in his peripheral vision, the telltale glint of camera lenses hidden in the foliage surrounding his home. Inside, the air felt thick with tension. Bobby guided Quasar to the living area, acutely aware of the hidden eyes watching their every move. He lowered her onto a sleek, ergonomic couch designed to accommodate Kazan physiology, a symbol of the attempted integration between their species. Water, Quasar slurred, her hand grasping at Bobby's sleeve. Need water. As Bobby moved to the kitchen, his comm unit buzzed insistently. He tapped it, expecting to hear the ambassador's voice, but was met with nothing but static. Frowning, he tried to initiate an outgoing call, only to find all channels unresponsive. A loud crash from the living area sent him rushing back. Quasar had knocked over a delicate vase, a gift from the Kazan High Council. As Bobby knelt to clean up the shards, he froze. Quasar's eyes, previously unfocused and bleary, now gleamed with sharp intelligence. "We don't have much time," she whispered, her voice suddenly clear and urgent. "This was all a ruse, Bobby, a necessary deception to expose a plot that threatens everything we've worked for." Before Bobby could process this revelation, the night exploded into chaos. The distant sound of explosions rocked the city, followed by the wail of emergency sirens. Through the window, he saw plumes of smoke rising from the direction of the human embassy. "It started," Quasar said, her face grim. "Commander Zax and his hardliners are making their move. They've been planning this for months, waiting for the perfect moment to strike against the humans and destabilize our alliance." Bobby's mind raced, piecing together the implications. "The gala, your behavior, it was all part of your plan?" Quasar nodded, her expression a mixture of willpower and regret. "I needed to create a scandal big enough to force the hardliners' hand, to draw them out into the open. But I underestimated their preparedness. They've turned this against us, Bobby. Right now, millions of Kazans are watching a manipulated feed of us, believing you're taking advantage of me." The gravity of the situation hit Bobby like a physical blow. Outside, the sounds of conflict grew louder. He could hear the distinctive whine of Kazan energy weapons mixed with the staccato bursts of human firearms. "We need to reach my father," Quasar said, standing up. "He needs to know the truth before it's too late. If we can expose Zax's treachery, we might still have a chance to salvage the peace." As they prepared to leave, Bobby found himself studying Quasar's face. Despite the dire circumstances, he couldn't help but admire her courage and quick thinking. Their eyes met, and for a moment the chaos outside faded away. There was an undeniable connection between them, born from the shared weight of their responsibilities and the dangerous path ahead. The moment was shattered by a deafening explosion nearby. The windows rattled, and the acrid smell of smoke began to seep into the room. Bobby grabbed a small emergency pack from a hidden compartment, a precaution he'd hoped never to use. "We'll have to take the back way," he said, leading Quasar to a concealed door. "There's a network of secure tunnels beneath the diplomatic quarter. If we're lucky, we can use them to reach the central government complex." As they stepped into the hidden passage, the sounds of conflict muffled but still audible. Bobby's comm unit crackled to life. Through bursts of static, he heard fragments of an emergency broadcast ordering all humans to evacuate immediately. Quasar placed a hand on his arm, her touch sending an unexpected jolt through him. "Whatever happens, Bobby, know that I believe in what we're doing. The future of both our species depends on us now." With a shared nod of understanding, they plunged into the dimly lit tunnel. Behind them, the secret door slid shut, sealing them off from the world above where the fate of human-Kazan relations hung in the balance. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the faint hope of averting an interstellar war. As they navigated the winding passageways, the distant sounds of conflict a constant reminder of the chaos above, Bobby and Quasar steeled themselves for the challenges ahead. Their mission was clear: reach the supreme leader, expose the hardliners' plot, and prevent the unraveling of decades of peace, all while confronting their growing feelings for each other in a world that forbade their union. The narrow tunnel widened, revealing a rusted maintenance hatch. Bobby and Quasar exchanged a glance, their breath shallow in the stale air. With a nod, Bobby pushed against the hatch, its hinges groaning in protest as it swung open. They emerged into a world of chaos. The Kazonian capital, once a beacon of interstellar cooperation, now burned. Smoke billowed from shattered buildings, and the acrid smell of weapons fire filled the air. Distant explosions punctuated the night, accompanied by the wail of sirens and the screams of both humans and Kazans caught in the crossfire. "We need to move," Quasar hissed, her multifaceted eyes scanning the debris-strewn street. "Zax's forces could be anywhere. As if on cue, a group of Kazan hardliners rounded the corner, their ceremonial armor now serving as battle gear. At their head strode Commander Zax, his elaborate head crest flaring with malicious intent. Bobby pulled Quasar behind an overturned vendor's cart, his heart pounding. They watched as Zax barked orders to his troops, pointing towards a cluster of buildings where human civilians huddled in terror. "We can't just leave them," Bobby whispered, his fists clenching in frustration. Quasar placed a hand on his arm, her touch both a comfort and a spark of electricity. "We have to reach my father. It's the only way to stop this." A burst of weapons fire erupted nearby, followed by the whine of an approaching vehicle. Bobby peered around the cart, spotting an abandoned Kazan hover vehicle, half hidden in an alley. "There's our ride," he said, gesturing towards the sleek machine. "Ready?" Quasar nodded, her face set with persistence. They sprinted across the open street, ducking as energy bolts sizzled overhead. Bobby reached the vehicle first, his fingers dancing across the unfamiliar controls. With a hum, the engines sprang to life. "Hold on!" he shouted as Quasar leapt aboard. The hover vehicle surged forward, weaving through the chaos-filled streets. From their elevated position, the full extent of the conflict became clear. Human diplomatic buildings smoldered, while Kazan extremists clashed with their more moderate brethren. Near the center of the city, the imposing structure of the human embassy stood besieged, its shields flickering under constant bombardment. "Ambassador Steele," Bobby muttered, recognizing the dire situation. "We have to—" His words were cut short as a stray energy bolt struck their vehicle. Alarms blared as Bobby fought for control, the hover vehicle spiraling towards the ground. With a bone-jarring crash, they slammed into the pavement of a commercial district, skidding to a stop in front of an abandoned storefront. "This way!" Quasar called, pulling Bobby from the smoking wreckage. They stumbled into the building, the sounds of approaching Kazan troops echoing behind them. Inside, they found themselves face-to-face with a group of terrified civilians, a mix of humans and Kazans huddled together in shared fear. One figure stepped forward, her azure skin marking her as Kazan, but her demeanor distinctly different from the others. "I'm Dr. Alara," she said, her voice calm despite the circumstances. "A xenobiologist, and I believe I have information that could change everything." As the sounds of conflict grew closer, Dr. Alara revealed her findings, years of secret research proving that humans and Kazans were biologically compatible. The laws forbidding their union, she explained, were rooted in political machinations rather than scientific fact. Bobby and Quasar exchanged a look, the implications of this revelation hitting them both. The growing connection between them, dismissed as a product of their dire circumstances, suddenly took on new meaning. Before they could fully process this information, the distinctive sound of Zax's voice drifted through a broken window. His forces were closing in. "The maintenance tunnels," Dr. Alara said urgently, pressing a data chip into Bobby's hand. "This map will guide you to the Supreme Leader's palace. Go. We'll create a distraction." With a final lingering glance at each other, Bobby and Quasar slipped into the tunnels once more. The dank passageways seemed to stretch endlessly, their path illuminated only by the faint glow of Bobby's comm unit displaying the map. They had traveled for what felt like hours when a voice called out from the darkness ahead. Bobby tensed, reaching for his weapon, but Quasar placed a restraining hand on his arm. "Tracks," she called, her voice a mix of hope and wariness. A group of young Kazans emerged from the shadows, led by a male with intricate patterns etched into his head crest. "Quasar," he said, relief evident in his voice. "We feared the worst when we heard about the gala." Introductions were made quickly as Trax explained their role, a youth movement dedicated to fostering human-Kazan relations. They offered to guide Bobby and Quasar to a secret entrance of the Supreme Leader's palace. As they moved through the tunnels, Bobby's comm unit crackled to life, intercepting a transmission that chilled them all to the bone. Zax's forces had breached the human embassy. Ambassador Steele was in custody, slated for public execution as a final push towards full-scale war. The group emerged from the tunnels near the palace, the imposing structure looming above them. In the distance, the sounds of General Lyra's loyalist forces pushing back against Zax's hardliners could be heard. "We need to split up," Bobby said, his eyes locked with Quasar's. "You have to reach your father. Tell him the truth. I'll go after Steele." The weight of their separation hung heavy between them. Quasar reached for the ceremonial dagger at her hip, pressing it into Bobby's hands. "For luck," she whispered. Bobby fumbled with his grandfather's pocket watch, the antique timepiece a stark contrast to the alien world around them. He placed it gently in Quasar's palm, their fingers lingering together. "Be careful," Bobby said, his voice thick with emotion. "You too," Quasar replied, her multifaceted eyes shimmering with unspoken feelings. As they parted ways, Quasar towards a hidden palace entrance, and Bobby with Trax's group towards Steele's likely location, the city erupted in a new wave of violence. The sky lit up with weapons fire, casting long shadows across the war-torn landscape. Bobby steeled himself, the weight of Quasar's dagger at his hip a constant reminder of what was at stake. As he and Trax's group approached the site where Steele was being held, the full magnitude of their task became clear. Dozens of hardliner Kazons patrolled the area, their weapons at the ready. In the center of it all stood Commander Zax, his imposing figure silhouetted against the burning city, and beside him, bound and battered but still defiant, was Ambassador Marcus Steele. Steele. The ambassador's face was bruised, his normally impeccable suit torn and stained, but his eyes still blazed with defiance. Bobby swallowed hard, pushing down the surge of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He turned to Trax, whose intricate head crest patterns seemed to shimmer in the flickering light of the burning city. "We need a distraction," Bobby whispered, his mind racing through potential strategies. "Something to draw their attention away from the center." Trax nodded, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the perseverance Bobby felt. "We can use the human architecture to our advantage. There's a maintenance access point on the west side that should be lightly guarded." As Trax outlined the plan to his fellow youth movement members, Bobby studied the layout of the repurposed human research facility. The familiar lines and angles of human design stood in stark contrast to the organic curves of Kazon architecture surrounding it. A plan began to form in his mind. "Follow me," Bobby said, leading the group towards a nondescript panel near the ground. With practiced ease, he pried it open, revealing a narrow crawl space. "These maintenance tunnels run throughout the facility. We can use them to bypass most of the guards." One by one, they slipped into the cramped passage. The air was stale and thick with dust, making breathing difficult. Bobby led the way, navigating the maze-like network of tunnels with the confidence born from years of diplomatic training in human outposts across the galaxy. As they crawled through the darkness, Bobby's mind drifted to Quasar. He hoped she had made it safely to her father, that she was even now presenting the evidence that could end this conflict. The weight of her dagger at his hip was a constant reminder of what was at stake. After what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, they reached a junction near Ambassador Steele's makeshift cell. Bobby peered through a ventilation grate, assessing the situation. 2 Kazan guards stood watch, their energy weapons held at the ready. "On my signal," Bobby whispered to Trax, who nodded in understanding. With a swift kick, Bobby knocked the grate loose. Before the guards could react, Trax and his companions surged forward, using their superior numbers to quickly overwhelm the surprised Kazons. Bobby rushed to Ambassador Steele's side, working to undo the alien restraints. "Ambassador, are you all right?" Steele grimaced as he stood favoring his left leg. "I've been better, Mr. Chen, but I'm alive, thanks to you and your unconventional allies." A commotion from outside the cell cut their reunion short. Commander Zax's voice boomed through the corridor, growing closer with each passing second. "We need to move," Bobby urged, supporting the ambassador's weight. "Trax, can you get him to safety?" The young Kazan hesitated for a moment before nodding. "We'll use the maintenance tunnels to reach the extraction point. But what about you?" Bobby's grip tightened on Quasar's dagger. "I'll buy you some time. Go!" As Trax and his team escorted Ambassador Steele into the relative safety of the maintenance tunnels, Bobby steeled himself for what was to come. He stepped out into the corridor just as Commander Zax rounded the corner, flanked by a cadre of hardliner troops. Zax's eyes widened in surprise before narrowing with rage. "You!" he snarled, his elaborate head crest flaring menacingly. Where is the human ambassador? Bobby stood his ground, mind racing as he formulated his response. He thought of Quasar, of Dr. Alara's revelations, of the countless humans and Kazans who had worked tirelessly for peace. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. Commander Zax, Bobby began, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. I challenge you to hear me out. The future of both our species hangs in the balance. Zax's laughter was harsh and bitter. You, a mere human, dares to challenge me? On what grounds? Bobby took a deep breath, drawing on every lesson in Kazan culture and diplomacy he had ever learned. On the grounds of truth, honor, and the sacred bonds between our peoples that you seek to destroy. As Bobby launched into an impassioned speech, challenging Zax's beliefs and exposing the flaws in his xenophobic ideology, events were unfolding across the city. In the opulent chambers of the Supreme Leader's palace, Quasar stood before her father, Kazatar. The regal Kazan's multifaceted eyes widened as he listened to his daughter's breathless explanation. Father, Quasar pleaded, presenting the evidence of the hardliners' plot. You must act now. Every moment we delay, more lives are lost. Kaztar's expression was unreadable as he absorbed the information. Years of political maneuvering had taught him caution, but the urgency in his daughter's voice was unmistakable. Before he could respond, a palace aide burst into the room, his crest flared in agitation. Supreme Leader, reports of widespread violence. The human embassy has fallen. Commander Zax is threatening to execute the human ambassador. Kaztar's willpower solidified. He turned to Quasar, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision. You have shown great courage, my daughter. Now, we must act to save our people, both Kazan and human. As Kaztar began issuing orders for an immediate ceasefire and denouncement of the hardliners, Quasar's thoughts turned to Bobby. She knew he would be in the thick of the conflict, risking everything to protect his people and the fragile peace between their species. Father, she said, her voice filled with perseverance, I must go to the research facility. I can help end this peacefully. Kaztar hesitated, concern evident in his eyes. But as he looked at his daughter, he saw not just a princess, but a capable diplomat in her own right. With a heavy heart, he nodded his assent. As Quasar raced towards the research facility with her elite security detail, the city around them was in chaos. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the streets, punctuated by the cries of the wounded and the roar of collapsing buildings. Inside the facility, Bobby found himself locked in a battle of words and wits with Commander Zax. The Kazan commander's rage was palpable, but Bobby could see doubt beginning to creep into the eyes of some of his followers. Your lies have blinded you, Zax, Bobby pressed, his voice growing hoarse from the intensity of their exchange. The truth is, humans and Kazans are not so different. We're compatible in ways you've tried to hide for years. Zax's eyes widened in shock, then narrowed with renewed fury. Enough, he roared, drawing his energy weapon. I will silence your treasonous tongue once and for all. As Zax leveled his weapon at Bobby, the facility shook with a massive explosion. Alarms blared, and a computerized voice announced the activation of a hidden weapon system. Bobby's blood ran cold as he realized the true depths of Zax's madness. The commander was willing to destroy everything, human, Kazan, and the fragile peace between them, rather than admit defeat. As chaos erupted around them, Bobby knew he had to find a way to disable the weapon and stop Zax before it was too late. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, and time was running out. Out. Bobby's mind raced, assessing his options in a split second. He knew he had to act fast to prevent catastrophe. Without hesitation, Bobby sprinted towards the facility's control center, his footsteps echoing through the chaos-filled corridors. The weight of Quasar's ceremonial dagger at his hip reminded him of what was at stake. Not just two worlds, but a future where humans and Kazans could coexist peacefully. As he navigated the maze-like structure, Bobby's diplomatic training kicked in. He ducked into alcoves and side passages, narrowly avoiding Zax's loyal guards, who patrolled the halls with increasing desperation. The facility shook with another explosion, and Bobby stumbled, catching himself against a wall, covered in a mixture of human and Kazon markings, a stark reminder of the facility's unique history. Finally, Bobby reached the control room. The door hissed open, revealing a chamber filled with a dizzying array of monitors and control panels. At the center stood a pulsing biotech interface, its organic tendrils intertwined with human technology in a grotesque fusion of two worlds. Bobby approached the interface, his heart pounding. He grasped Quasar's dagger, studying its intricate engravings for a moment before pressing the blade against the pulsing surface. The interface reacted immediately, tendrils wrapping around the dagger as it analyzed the DNA traces left by Quasar's touch. The room hummed with energy as Bobby initiated the deactivation sequence. Screens flickered with Kazan script, incomprehensible to him but clearly indicating progress. Just as the final confirmation appeared, the door burst open. "You meddling fool!" Commander Zax's voice boomed through the control room. The Kazan's crest flared with rage, his eyes wild with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Bobby turned to face him, hands raised. "It's over, Zax. The weapon is powering down. There's still a chance for peace." Zax's response came in the form of a primal roar as he lunged at Bobby. The human diplomat narrowly dodged the attack, his smaller size and agility working to his advantage in the cramped space of the control room. The two opponents crashed through the door and into the main atrium, their struggle spilling out for all to see. Zax's remaining forces watched in stunned silence as their commander grappled with the human interloper. Bobby ducked under a wild swing from Zax, countering with a swift jab to the Kazan's midsection. Zax grunted but pressed forward, his superior strength threatening to overwhelm Bobby. They traded blows, each searching for an advantage. As they fought, Bobby's mind raced through everything he knew about Kazan physiology and fighting styles. He used the environment to his advantage, ducking behind consoles and leaping over debris to keep Zax off balance. Suddenly, the atrium doors burst open. Quasar charged in, leading her elite security team. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. "Bobby!" she called out, her voice filled with concern and drive. Hearing her voice, Bobby found renewed strength. He sidestepped another of Zax's attacks, creating space between them. Quasar seized the opportunity, moving to flank the Kazan commander. Together, Bobby and Quasar engaged Zax in a coordinated assault. Their movements complemented each other perfectly, Bobby's quick, precise strikes setting up Quasar's powerful Kazan combat techniques. Zax, caught between them, began to falter. With a final decisive move, Bobby and Quasar struck simultaneously. Zax crashed to the ground, defeated. The atrium fell silent, all eyes on the unlikely pair standing victorious over the fallen commander. Bobby, breathing heavily, turned to address the Kazan forces watching in disbelief. He spoke with the clarity and conviction that had made him a rising star in the diplomatic corps. "This conflict is over," he declared, his voice carrying across the atrium. "Supreme Leader Kazitar has called for an immediate ceasefire. The hardliners' plot has been exposed, and the weapon threatening both our peoples has been neutralized." Quasar stepped forward, lending her support to Bobby's words. "My father, your supreme leader, seeks a new era of cooperation between Kazans and humans. We stand before you as living proof that our species can work together, can trust one another." As they spoke, more figures entered the atrium. General Lyra arrived with her loyalist forces, securing the perimeter. Ambassador Steele, looking worse for wear but standing tall, entered with a human peacekeeping team. Steele's eyes widened as he took in the scene. Bobby and Quasar standing side by side, addressing a mixed crowd of humans and Kazans. The ambassador's expression shifted from surprise to thoughtful consideration. Dr. Alara, the Kazan xenobiologist, hurried into the atrium clutching a data pad. She approached Ambassador Steele and the Kazan officials present, her eyes bright with excitement. "Ambassador, esteemed officials," she began, her voice quivering with nearly unleashed enthusiasm. "I have conclusive evidence of human-Kazan biological compatibility. My research challenges everything we thought we knew about our species' interactions." As Dr. Alara launched into a detailed explanation of her findings, Bobby and Quasar shared a glance. The weight of the moment hung between them. the realization that their actions, their partnership, had potentially changed the course of human-Kazon relations forever. Ambassador Steele, listening intently to Dr. Ilara's presentation, cast occasional glances at Bobby and Quasar. His brow furrowed in thought, the strict laws he had long upheld regarding human-Kazon relationships suddenly seeming less absolute in light of recent events. As the situation in the facility stabilized, news of the averted crisis began to spread across Kazonia. Comm channels buzzed with reports of human and Kazon cooperation, of the bravery displayed by individuals on both sides. In the midst of the chaos and aftermath, Bobby and Quasar found a quiet moment alone. They stood close, the adrenaline of the fight fading, replaced by a growing awareness of each other. "We did it," Bobby said softly, his eyes meeting Quasar's multifaceted gaze. Quasar nodded, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We did, together." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining. The gesture, simple yet profound, spoke volumes about the journey they had undertaken and the challenges that still lay ahead. "What happens now?" Bobby asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Quasar could respond, they were interrupted by an aide rushing towards them. "Princess Quasar, Mr. Chen," the aide said, bowing slightly. "Your presence is requested. Supreme Leader Kaztar has called for an emergency session of the High Council. You are both to address the assembly." Bobby and Quasar shared another look, understanding passing between them. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. As they followed the aide, preparing to address the council and shape the future of human-Kazon relations, the weight of their responsibility settled upon them. The galaxy watched, waiting to see what would emerge from this crucible of conflict and cooperation. Cooperation and revolution that had begun in a moment of crisis. The High Council chamber buzzed with anticipation as Bobby and Quasar entered. Rows of Kazon officials filled the tiered seating, their crests rippling with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Human representatives, including Ambassador Steele, occupied a section near the front, their presence a testament to the unprecedented nature of the gathering. Supreme Leader Kaztar stood at the center, his imposing figure commanding attention. As Bobby and Quasar approached, Kaztar's eyes softened, a flicker of pride passing over his features as he regarded his daughter. "Members of the High Council, honored human guests," Kaztar began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "We stand at a crossroads in our history. The events of the past days have shaken the very foundations of our society, but they have also illuminated a path forward." Bobby stepped forward, his heart racing as he addressed the assembly. "What we've discovered challenges everything we thought we knew about human-Kazon relations. The biological compatibility between our species, the shared potential for cooperation. These aren't just scientific curiosities. They're the building blocks of a new future." Quasar joined him, her presence a living embodiment of their words. "My father, esteemed council members, we have an opportunity to redefine what it means to be Kazon, what it means to be human, not as separate entities, but as partners in the vast expanse of the galaxy." As they spoke, Bobby noticed Ambassador Steele's expression shift from skepticism to thoughtful consideration. The strict laws that had long governed human-Kazon interactions suddenly seemed less absolute in light of recent events. In the days that followed, Kazonia experienced a seismic shift. Supreme Leader Kazastar, influenced by the undeniable evidence and his daughter's impassioned plea, began the process of relaxing laws prohibiting human-Kazon interactions. The decision sent shockwaves through both societies. On the streets of the capital, humans and Kazons cautiously began to mingle. Restaurants started offering fusion cuisine, blending flavors from both worlds. Cultural exchange programs sprang up overnight, with eager participants on both sides. But not everyone embraced the change. Bobby noticed the wary glances, the hushed conversations that stopped when he approached. Change, he knew, was never easy. 3 months after the High Council address, Bobby found himself standing on the bridge of the research vessel, Horizon, staring out at the star-flecked void of space. Beside him, Quasar studied a holographic display of their destination, a newly discovered habitable moon in the Kazon system. "Hard to believe we're really doing this," Bobby murmured, his eyes fixed on the distant pinprick of light that was their destination. Quasar nodded, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight. A joint human-Kazan settlement. My father calls it a model for the future. The bridge hummed with activity as the human and Kazan crew worked in tandem. Captain Reeves, a veteran human pilot, called out course corrections while his Kazan co-pilot, Lieutenant Crone, made minute adjustments to their trajectory. Dr. Alara bustled onto the bridge, her crest flushed with excitement. Bobby, Quasar, you need to see this. She thrust a data pad towards them, her eyes bright. My latest analysis shows even greater genetic compatibility than we initially thought. The implications for long-term cohabitation are incredible. As Bobby examined the data, a warning klaxon blared through the ship. Captain Reeves's voice cut through the sudden chaos. Uncharted asteroid field dead ahead. All hands, brace for evasive maneuvers. The view outside the bridge window shifted dramatically as the horizon banked hard to port. Bobby grabbed onto a nearby console, his nucleus tightening. He watched in awe as Captain Reeves and Lieutenant Crone worked in perfect synchronization, their hands flying over the controls. Boost lateral thrusters 30%, Reeves barked. Compensating for gravitational pull from that large body at 2 o'clock, Crone responded, his fingers dancing across his interface. The ship shuddered as it threaded its way through the asteroid field. Bobby held his breath, acutely aware of how quickly their mission could end before it even began. But with each passing moment, the coordination between the human and Kazan pilots grew stronger. Finally, after what felt like hours but was merely minutes, the horizon emerged from the asteroid field. A collective sigh of relief swept through the bridge. Captain Reeves turned to Lieutenant Crone, a grin spreading across his face. Damn fine flying, Lieutenant. Crone's crest rippled with pride. Couldn't have done it without you, Captain. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Bobby realized he was still clutching Quasar's hand. They exchanged a look, unspoken words passing between them. This was why they were here, to prove that, together, humans and Kazans could overcome any obstacle. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity as the expedition team established their base on the moon they christened Harmony. The harsh environment posed constant challenges, forcing humans and Kazans to rely on each other's unique strengths and knowledge. Bobby's diplomatic skills were put to the test daily, mediating disputes and fostering cooperation among the team members. Quasar's natural leadership abilities shone as she organized work crews and kept morale high. One evening, as the twin suns of the Kazan system dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange, Bobby stood at the edge of the base perimeter. The alien landscape stretched out before him, a vista of rocky plains and twisted vegetation unlike anything on Earth or Kazonia. Quasar joined him, her breath visible in the rapidly cooling air. Credit for your thoughts? She asked, using the human phrase she'd picked up. Bobby smiled. Just thinking about how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Before Quasar could respond, Dr. Alara's voice crackled over their comm units. Bobby, Quasar, you need to see this immediately. They rushed to the excavation site where Dr. Alara and her team had been working. As they approached, they saw the xenobiologist standing at the edge of a massive pit, her crest fully extended in excitement. Look, she breathed, pointing into the darkness below. Bobby and Quasar peered over the edge. As their eyes adjusted, they gasped in unison. There, illuminated by portable floodlights, were the unmistakable outlines of ancient structures. But it was the details that made their hearts race. The architecture was a seamless blend of two distinct styles, as if two vastly different species had come together to create something entirely new. It's incredible, Quasar whispered, her voice filled with awe. Bobby nodded, his mind racing with the implications. This could change everything. Proof that interspecies cooperation isn't just possible, but... His words were cut off by a sudden commotion from the communications center. A young human technician ran towards them, his face pale. Mr. Chen, Princess Quasar, he panted. We've detected an incoming ship. It's armed and not responding to hails. Bobby's blood ran cold as he remembered the reports of growing opposition back on Kazonia. He turned to Quasar, seeing his own concern mirrored in her eyes. "We need to get back to the base," he said, his voice tight. "Now!" As they hurried back, the first pinpricks of starlight appeared in the darkening sky. Somewhere up there, an unknown threat was approaching. Bobby's mind raced, trying to formulate a plan. Whatever happened next, he knew that the future of human-Kazon relations hung in the balance, and he was determined not to let it slip away. As Bobby and Quasar rushed back to the base, the alien sky darkened above them. The twin suns had set, leaving behind a tapestry of unfamiliar stars. The distant pinprick of light that marked the approaching ship grew steadily brighter. "This is it," Bobby muttered, his breath coming in short bursts as they ran. "Everything we've worked for." Quasar's multifaceted eyes glinted in the starlight. "We won't let them destroy it. Not now." They burst into the command center, where Captain Reeves and Lieutenant Crone were already hunched over the communications array. The air crackled with tension as the rest of the expedition team gathered around, a mix of human and Kazon faces etched with concern. "Any response to our hails?" Quasar asked, her crest rippling with terrifying energy. Reeves shook his head. "Nothing. They're maintaining radio silence." Bobby's mind raced. He'd faced diplomatic crises before, but never with such high stakes. "We need to buy time," he said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. "And we need to show them what we've accomplished here." As if on cue, Dr. Alara burst into the room, her crest fully extended in excitement. "I've done it!" she exclaimed, waving a datapad. "I've cracked the ancient language. You won't believe what I found." Bobby's eyes lit up. "That's it. That's our angle." He turned to the assembled team. "We're going to invite them down, show them everything, make them see what we see." Quasar nodded, catching on to his plan. A risky move, but it might be our only chance. The next hours were a flurry of activity. As Quasar coordinated the base's defenses, integrating human and Kazon technology into a hybrid shield system, Bobby worked on his diplomatic approach. He crafted a message emphasizing peace and shared discovery, appealing to the curiosity that drove both their species to the stars. Finally, a response came. The ship's commander, a hardline Kazon named Vex, agreed to send a small delegation to the surface. As Bobby relayed the news, a mix of relief and apprehension swept through the base. "Remember," Bobby addressed the team, "every interaction, every detail they see here could make the difference. We're not just defending our base, we're fighting for the future of human-Kazon relations." The delegation's shuttle descended through Harmony's atmosphere, touching down on the landing pad with a hiss of hydraulics. Bobby and Quasar stood side by side, flanked by their mixed crew, as the shuttle's door opened. Vex emerged first, his imposing figure silhouetted against the shuttle's interior lights. His crest was pulled tight against his skull, a sign of aggression or defensiveness. Behind him, 4 other Kazons followed, their eyes darting suspiciously around the base. "Welcome to Harmony," Bobby said, stepping forward with his hands open in a gesture of peace. "We have much to show you." Vex's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "We'll see about that, human." The tour began, tension thick in the air. Bobby and Quasar led the delegation through the base, pointing out the seamless integration of human and Kazon living spaces and work areas. In the hydroponics bay, they showcased plants from both worlds growing side by side, nourished by an irrigation system that blended technologies from both species. As they walked, Bobby noticed subtle changes in the delegates' body language. Clenched jaws relaxed slightly. Crests began to ripple with curiosity rather than aggression. Even Vex, who had maintained a stony expression, leaned in with interest as Dr. Alara explained their breakthroughs in xenobiology. The tour culminated at the archaeological site. Under the glow of portable floodlights, the ancient structures loomed, their architecture a testament to cooperation long past. Dr. Alara stepped forward, her crest flushed with excitement. "What we've discovered here changes everything," she began, activating a holographic display. This civilization was formed by 2 distinct species who overcame their differences to create something extraordinary. The hologram flickered to life, showing reconstructions of the ancient inhabitants. One species clearly ancestral to the Kazons, the other bearing a striking resemblance to humans. As Dr. Alara explained how these ancient peoples had worked together to overcome environmental challenges. Similar to those on Harmony, Bobby watched the delegates' reactions closely. Vex's expression had transformed from skepticism to wonder. This cannot be coincidence, he murmured. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the base. Captain Reeves's voice crackled over the comms. Incoming weapons fire! Shields holding, but we can't take much more. Chaos erupted. Bobby and Quasar quickly ushered the delegation to a secure bunker, their carefully planned tour dissolving into a mad dash for safety. As they huddled in the reinforced chamber, the ground shook with the impact of orbital bombardment. Through a small view screen, they watched as the integrated defense systems sprang into action. The hybrid shields, a shimmering blend of human and Kazan energy fields, deflected blast after blast. In the sky above, the modified research vessel, piloted by the unlikely duo of Reeves and Crone, darted between incoming missiles, drawing their fire away from the base. Vex stared at the display, his expression unreadable. Then, to everyone's surprise, he barked an order into his communicator. Cease fire immediately. This is Commander Vex. I repeat, cease all hostilities. The bombardment stopped as suddenly as it had begun. In the silence that followed, Vex turned to Bobby and Quasar. I was wrong, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. What you've built here, it's not just possible, it's necessary. Bobby felt a surge of hope. Then help us share it with others, he said. Let us invite observers from Earth and Kazonia. Let them see what we've seen. Vex nodded slowly. I will support this, and I will speak to those who oppose it. They must understand what I now understand. As the immediate danger passed, Bobby and Quasar found themselves preparing for a joint broadcast to their homeworlds. They stood before the camera, the ancient ruins behind them. Their team, human and Kazan alike, gathered around. Bobby took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. People of Earth and Kazonia, he began, what we have discovered here on Harmony is more than just an archaeological find. It's a roadmap for our future. As they spoke, weaving together the story of their discoveries and the successful defense of their base, Bobby felt a shift in the air. The path ahead was still uncertain, fraught with challenges. But for the first time, he truly believed that a new era of human-Kazan relations was possible. The real work, he knew, was just beginning. Beginning. The words hung in the air as Bobby finished his speech, his heart pounding with a mixture of exhilaration and nervous energy. Quasar stood beside him, her crest rippling with pride and willpower. As the camera lights dimmed, signaling the end of the broadcast, a wave of cheers erupted from the assembled team. Humans and Kazans alike embraced, their faces alight with hope and possibility. Bobby felt a gentle pressure on his hand and looked down to see Quasar's fingers intertwined with his own. We did it, she whispered, her multifaceted eyes shimmering with emotion. Bobby nodded, squeezing her hand. This is just the start. Over the next few weeks, Harmony buzzed with activity as neutral observers from Earth and Kazonia arrived. The expedition team worked tirelessly, showcasing their achievements and the potential for human-Kazan cooperation. Dr. Alara led tours of the archaeological site, her crest fully extended as she explained the significance of their findings. These ancient peoples faced challenges similar to our own, she said, gesturing to a holographic display of the ruins. But together, they created solutions neither could have achieved alone. In the hydroponics bay, human botanists and Kazan agronomists demonstrated their collaborative efforts. Rows of vibrant plants from both worlds thrived under carefully calibrated lights, a living testament to the power of shared knowledge. Captain Reeves and Lieutenant Crone proudly presented their latest project, a prototype spacecraft that merged human and Kazan technologies. As they explained the innovations in propulsion and life support systems, Bobby noticed the observers leaning in, their expressions shifting from skepticism to genuine interest. Months passed and Harmony transformed. The once barren landing site now bustled with activity. New structures rose from the rocky ground, their architecture a harmonious blend of human and Kazan design principles. The ancient ruins, carefully preserved and studied, became the heart of a thriving research center. One afternoon, Bobby found himself in the medical bay, watching as Dr. Alara demonstrated a revolutionary new treatment. By combining Kazon regenerative techniques with human stem cell therapy, she explained, her crest flushed with excitement, we've developed a method to accelerate healing in both species. A young human scientist raised his hand. Could this be adapted for use back on Earth and Kazonia? Dr. Alara nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely, the applications are virtually limitless. As word of these advancements spread, public opinion began to shift. Bobby and Quasar found themselves fielding an increasing number of messages from both their homeworlds. Humans and Kazons alike expressed support for their mission, with many volunteering for future joint projects. One evening, as they walked along the perimeter of the base, Bobby shared the latest news with Quasar. Zorn's coalition is losing ground fast, he said, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. More and more Kazons are speaking out in favor of cooperation with humans. Quasar's crest rippled with pleasure. Similar changes are happening on Earth. I received word that several major universities are establishing exchange programs for human and Kazon students. They paused at the edge of a cliff, gazing out at the alien landscape bathed in the light of the setting twin suns. Bobby turned to Quasar, struck once again by her otherworldly beauty. We've come so far, he murmured. Quasar met his gaze, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the starlight. Together, she said softly, leaning in closer. Their lips met in a tender kiss, a moment of quiet intimacy amidst the whirlwind of change they had set in motion. As they separated, Bobby couldn't help but grin. You know, this would have been illegal not too long ago. Quasar laughed, a sound like chiming bells. Perhaps we should make it our next mission to change that too. Little did they know how prophetic those words would prove to be. Weeks later, Bobby stood before a gathering of human and Kazon officials in Harmony's newly constructed meeting hall. His heart raced as he delivered the proposal he and Quasar had worked tirelessly to prepare. The success of our mission here on Harmony proves that humans and Kazons are stronger together, he said, his voice steady and clear. We propose the establishment of Harmony as an official collaborative colony, open to all who wish to contribute to our shared future. As murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd, Bobby caught Quasar's eye. She nodded encouragingly, her crest extended in a display of pride and support. The vote was unanimous. In a historic joint statement, Supreme Leader Kaztar and Earth's governments announced their agreement to Bobby and Quasar's proposal. Harmony would become a beacon of interspecies cooperation, a model for future joint ventures across the galaxy. As the colony grew, so too did Bobby and Quasar's relationship. They navigated the complexities of their cultural differences with patience, humor, and an unwavering commitment to understanding each other. Their union became a symbol of hope and progress, inspiring others to bridge the gap between their species. 1 year after their initial landing on Harmony, Bobby found himself standing before a mirror, adjusting the collar of his formal attire, a unique blend of human and Kazon styles. Today marked a celebration unlike any other in the history of their two peoples. Quasar entered the room, resplendent in her own hybrid ceremonial garb. Are you ready? She asked, her crest shimmering with anticipation. Bobby took a deep breath, smiling at their reflection. More than ready, he replied, taking her hand. Together they made their way to the Grand Plaza at the heart of the colony. A sea of faces, human and Kazon alike, greeted them with cheers and applause. Bobby and Quasar took their places at the center of the gathering, joined by several other couples, some human, some Kazon, and some, like them, a union of both worlds. As the hybrid wedding ceremony began, blending traditions from Earth and Kazonia, Bobby felt a sense of profound rightness. This was what they had fought for, what they had dreamed of, a future where their peoples could come together in love and harmony. Just as they prepared to exchange vows, a commotion at the edge of the crowd caught their attention. A young human aide rushed forward, clutching a datapad. Mr. Chen, Princess Quasar? She panted, her face flushed with excitement. A message from Earth and Kazonia. You need to see this immediately. Bobby's heart skipped a beat as he took the pad, Quasar leaning in close to read alongside him. As their eyes scanned the words on the screen, A wave of joy and disbelief washed over them. "It's official," Bobby announced, his voice cracking with emotion. "Both Earth and Kazonia have fully repealed all laws prohibiting human-Kazan relationships." A moment of stunned silence fell over the gathered crowd, followed by an explosion of cheers, applause, and joyous cries. Humans and Kazans embraced, tears of happiness streaming down faces of all colors and textures. As the celebration erupted around them, Bobby turned to Quasar, his eyes shining. "Shall we continue?" he asked, gesturing to the official presiding over their ceremony. Quasar's crest rippled with pure joy as she nodded. "By all means," she replied, her voice filled with love and promise. Their vows, a beautiful blend of Earth and Kazonian traditions, echoed across the plaza. As they sealed their union with a kiss, Bobby knew that this was more than just a personal milestone. It was a new beginning for both their peoples, a step towards a future brighter than they had ever dared to imagine. The celebration lasted well into the night, a joyous blend of human and Kazan music, dance, and cuisine. As the twin moons of harmony rose in the alien sky, Bobby and Quasar found a moment of quiet amidst the festivities. They stood on a hilltop overlooking the colony, now a bustling center of interstellar cooperation. Lights twinkled below, a testament to how far they had come from that first precarious landing. "It's beautiful," Quasar murmured, leaning against Bobby's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, marveling at the warmth of her skin against his. "It really is," he agreed, his mind racing with possibilities for their shared future. As the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in a breathtaking array of colors, Bobby turned to Quasar with a mischievous glint in his eye. "You know," he said, a grin spreading across his face, "there's still one mystery I've been dying to solve since we met." Quasar raised an eyebrow ridge, her crest rippling with curiosity. "Oh? And what might that be?" Bobby leaned in close, his voice dropping to a playful whisper. "So, about that thing between legs you mentioned way back when." Quasar's laughter rang out, clear and joyous in the evening air. She playfully punched his arm before pulling him in for a passionate kiss. As their lips met, Bobby felt a surge of love and excitement for the adventures that lay ahead, both for them and for the future of human-Kazan relations. The scene faded to black, but the story of harmony and its founders was far from finished. In the years to come, Bobby and Quasar would face new challenges and triumphs, always working together to build a brighter future for both their peoples. Their love, born from an unlikely meeting and forged in the crucible of interstellar diplomacy, would continue to inspire generations of humans and Kazans to reach for the stars, together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.